Story 1. I've always liked silence. It clears my mind better than therapy ever could. That's why, when work pressure almost broke me, I packed my old tent and drove into Black Pine Forest, a place so remote that GPS stops working after the main road. There's no signal, no people, no noise, just trees and the sound of your own breathing. But I learned something that night. Silence is only peaceful when you're sure no one else is listening. When I reached the forest clearing, the sun was sliding behind the trees, staining everything orange. I parked my car, threw my backpack over my shoulder, and hiked a few miles until I found a flat patch near a small stream. The forest here didn't feel threatening at first. It smelled of pine and damp moss. The air was cold but clean, and I felt like I'd finally escaped from everything. Setting up camp took less than half an hour. I built a small fire, cooked instant noodles, and watched the smoke disappear into the leaves above. It was perfect, until someone called my name. Ethan. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The voice was faint, like it came from far away, soft enough that it could have been the wind twisting through the trees. I froze, bowl of noodles halfway to my mouth. Then it came again. Ethan. My hands trembled. No one knew I was here. I hadn't told a single soul, not even my sister, who usually nags me about every trip. My phone had no signal. There shouldn't be anyone in miles. I grabbed my flashlight and called out, "Who's there?" No answer, only the cracking sound of shifting branches. After a while, I told myself it was my imagination and went back to my tent. The forest grew quieter as night fell. Even the insects had stopped. Somewhere deep inside me, a small fear started growing, a fear I couldn't quite name. An hour later, the voice came again. This time it was closer. "Ethan." My entire body went cold. The voice wasn't a shout, it was a whisper, slow, stretched, and wrong. I pointed my flashlight outside, the beam swinging between the trunks, but the forest looked empty. No movement, no shapes, just darkness swallowing everything. I shouted again, louder this time. "Who's there? Show yourself!" The silence that followed felt heavy, like the air itself didn't want to move. Then I heard the sound of footsteps crunching leaves, maybe 20 meters away, moving toward me. I aimed my light toward the sound, heart beating like a drum. No one was there. Still, the footsteps came closer. 10 meters. 5. Right outside my tent. Then they stopped. I held my breath, waiting. The flashlight beam caught only fog and branches. Suddenly, I heard my own name, whispered from just a few feet behind me. I spun around, but there was nothing. Nothing except the fire dying down, smoke curling upward. That was when panic truly hit. I dashed into my tent, zipped it shut, and grabbed my phone. The screen glowed weakly, no signal. My hands shook as I opened the voice recorder app. I didn't know why I did it, maybe to prove to myself that I wasn't crazy. I pressed record and held the phone out, whispering, "Is anyone here?" A few moments passed. Silence. Then, soft breathing. I froze. It wasn't mine. It came from the other side of the thin tent wall. Slow, shallow breaths, as if someone stood right there listening. I didn't dare move. The breathing stopped, and the forest went dead silent again. I ended the recording but couldn't sleep. I stayed awake until dawn, eyes wide, body tense, clutching the flashlight like a weapon. When light finally seeped through the tent, I felt foolish but relieved. I played the recording before packing up, hoping to hear nothing but static. But as soon as the playback began, I almost dropped the phone. Between my own nervous words, another sound came through, clear, unmistakable whispers. "Stay with us." The voice wasn't just one, it was several, low and distorted, overlapping like a crowd speaking at once, and they were close, so close that I could hear faint laughter underneath. I turned the volume up, listening again, trying to convince myself it was wind interference or some echo. But then something happened that made my stomach drop. On the recording, after the word us, I heard a quiet chuckle. Then another whisper. Behind you. I froze. As the last whisper faded through the speaker, the exact same words, in the exact same rasping tone, sounded right behind my ear. Behind you. I spun so fast my flashlight fell and rolled away. Nothing there, only air moving through the tent. My chest hurt. I could barely breathe. I bolted out of the tent and nearly tripped over the rope. Every instinct told me to run, and I did. I didn't stop until I reached my car. When I finally drove out of those woods, the morning light looked strange. Too pale, too thin, like the world itself hadn't woken up yet. My hands kept shaking on the steering wheel. That night, safe at home, I told myself it was over, but curiosity won. I played that recording again. It was silent for a long time, just static and faint breathing. Then came two soft words. Welcome back. Story 2. Have you ever stared at something strange and felt it staring right back at you? That's what happened to us that night in the forest. And if you think the woods are peaceful at night, you've never really listened to them when they realize you don't belong there. It started as a simple weekend trip. Just me and my friend Ryan. 2 guys escaping city noise, tired jobs, and screens. We wanted quiet, campfire smoke, and the kind of dark you can only find deep in the woods. We drove to Raven Pine Forest, a place we picked off a hiking forum. It was supposed to be peaceful. We hiked for hours until we found a spot near a small clearing surrounded by pines tall enough to hide the sky. The air smelled of earth and wet bark. We set up our tents, cooked canned beans, and joked about scary stories. Ryan teased me about being paranoid when I said I'd double-check the car locks. Dude, there's no one here but trees, he laughed. When the fire died, we crawled into our tents and drifted to sleep. But sometime after midnight, I woke up to a faint blue glow flickering through the tent fabric. At first I thought it was lightning, until I noticed it was pulsing, smooth and deliberate, like it was alive. Ryan, I whispered. He mumbled. Do you see that? He unzipped his tent halfway. The blue lights were moving between the trees, slow and fluid, like they were dancing. Probably other campers, he said, rubbing his eyes. Maybe someone walking with headlamps. But there was no sound, no crunch of boots, no voices. Only the faint hum of wind and those lights, 3 or 4 of them, drifting from trunk to trunk. We stood there watching for a minute before Ryan grabbed his flashlight. Come on, let's check it out. I wanted to say no, but curiosity can be louder than fear sometimes. We followed the glow. At first it seemed close, but the deeper we walked, the further it moved, like the forest was stretching. The trees looked different now, taller, thicker. The path we'd made earlier was gone, replaced with uneven ground and shapes of fallen logs I didn't remember. The air turned colder too. My breath came out white. You feel that? I asked. Ryan nodded. Weird, right? We kept walking, drawn by the hypnotic movement of the blue light ahead, flashing slowly like a heartbeat. Then it vanished, just blinked out. We stood in complete darkness. My flashlight flickered once and died. Ryan, I said, my voice shaking. Yeah? He whispered. Which way's the camp? He shone his light back the way we came, but nothing looked familiar. It felt wrong, the kind of wrong that makes your skin crawl before your brain understands why. Then, unexpectedly, the light reappeared, behind us. It floated at eye level, unmoving, brighter this time, almost burning blue-white. Slowly, it started to drift toward us. Ryan stepped back. Okay, I think we should run. We did. We ran as fast as we could, tripping over roots and stones. Every time I glanced back, that same glow followed, always the same distance behind us. Never closer, never further, just following. When we finally stumbled into a familiar clearing, I gasped in relief. "We made it," I said. "We're back." But something was off. Our tents were gone. The campfire site was gone. Even the tire tracks near the trees had vanished. The clearing looked older, as if decades had passed. Moss covered the rocks, weeds grew where our gear had been, and the air smelled of rot instead of camp smoke. I turned to Ryan, but he wasn't looking at me. He was staring at the trees. "They're taller," he whispered. "Look around you." He was right. The forest had changed. It was darker, denser. The stars overhead were missing. Only low clouds hung across the sky. Maybe we just took a wrong turn, I said weakly, though deep down, I knew that made no sense. Then we heard whispering. It came from the trees, soft, broken voices overlapping like a distant crowd. I couldn't make out words, but it sounded like they were saying our names. At first, just Ryan's, then mine, then both, blending and twisting. Ryan grabbed my arm. "Do you hear that?" Before I could answer, he turned and shouted, "Who's there?" The whispering stopped. The next second, the lights came back, dozens of them this time, floating between the trunks. They swayed, danced, circled us like a silent storm. Every pulse of blue light stretched shadows across our faces, and I thought I saw shapes inside them, faces, hands, outlines of bodies that weren't really there. Ryan took a step backward, eyes wide in terror. "We need to move." We turned and ran again, not sure where we were going. The forest spun around us like a maze, each tree looking like the last. Somewhere behind me, I heard Ryan screaming my name, but when I looked back, he was gone. "Ryan!" I shouted. No answer. Only the lights moving among the trees like they were searching for him or me. I don't know how long I ran before I fell to the ground, exhausted. When I looked up again, the forest looked normal, not older, not darker. My watch said it was morning. Birds were chirping. My camp was back. My tent, my sleeping bag, everything as I'd left it. But Ryan's tent stood open and empty. His bag was still there, his shoes too. But he was just gone. I called for him all day, searched every path until sunset. Nothing. I finally drove home, terrified but alive. For days, I couldn't sleep. Yesterday, I finally checked my phone. I don't remember taking pictures that night, but there was one new image in my gallery. In it, I'm standing in the clearing, looking confused, and behind me, the bluish lights form a tall figure, faint and transparent, with Ryan's body shape glowing inside it. Story 3. You know that feeling when something looks normal but feels wrong? That's exactly how it started. A barbecue, a forest, laughter, and a deer that wouldn't stop staring at us. We'd gone camping as a family, me, my wife Jenna, our son Liam, and my daughter Chloe. It was supposed to be a small weekend getaway after a stressful month. We found a nice clearing near Pine Ridge Forest, open space, soft soil, a few tall trees surrounding us like walls. It felt safe, peaceful, almost too perfect. When the sun began to drop, I set up the grill while Jenna prepared the food. Liam chased Chloe around the campsite, screaming about bugs and playing explorer. Everything felt lighthearted, ordinary. Until Chloe froze, she stopped in the middle of the clearing and pointed toward the tree line. "Dad," she whispered. "Look." There, standing half hidden behind the brush, was a deer. Its body was still, completely motionless. The way it stared made my stomach tighten. It wasn't curious, not afraid, just silent, like it had been waiting. "Guess we've got company," I said, forcing a laugh. "Don't worry, they're harmless." Jenna looked at it too, then frowned. "It's not moving." And it didn't. Not for hours. We went on eating, the smell of meat filling the air, smoke rising into the fading light. But every few minutes, my eyes drifted back to that deer. Its eyes glinted in the firelight, shining faintly red, like reflecting something that wasn't there. When night fell, the deer was still there. Same spot, same stiffness, still staring straight toward us. I tried to ignore it, telling myself animals act weird sometimes. But something about its posture bothered me. Its front leg looked bent backward at a strange angle, like no bone should bend like that. After everyone went to sleep, I sat outside the tent for a while, poking the dying fire and keeping watch. Around midnight, the forest felt different. No wind, no crickets, not even the usual rustle of leaves. Then, suddenly, the silence broke, with a scream. It wasn't an animal sound. It was human, sharp, hoarse, agonizing. Liam bolted upright from inside the tent. "Dad, someone's shouting!" Jenna stumbled out too, panicked. "Where's it coming from?" It took me a second to realize. The sound was coming from the deer. I turned my flashlight toward the tree line. The deer had moved closer, much closer. It was now standing near the fire pit, its head tilted unnaturally low, mouth open wider than it should. From that gaping mouth came a twisted, blood-curdling scream again, echoing through the forest like a person crying for help. Chloe started crying. Jenna whispered that we should leave right away. My instincts told me the same, but something, I don't know what, forced me to take a step forward. "Stay here," I said. I walked slowly, flashlight trembling in my hand. The deer looked broken up close. Its legs were bent at impossible angles, skin stretched thin. Its eyes looked hollow but alive, shining in unnatural blue light. The smell coming from it was rotten and metallic. I lowered my flashlight to its chest. I swear I could see something moving underneath the skin, pressing outward like hands trying to escape. Then it screamed again, louder, and its throat bulged, rippling like something inside was struggling. I stumbled back toward the tent, grabbing Jenna's hand. "Get in the car, now!" But the car was parked nearly half a mile down the trail. We were surrounded by trees and fog rolling in without warning. The deer didn't move. It just stood there, shaking violently, bones cracking louder than the breaking branches around us. Then, just as suddenly as it began, everything went silent again. No scream, no wind, only the faint hiss of dying embers. We stayed inside the tent, huddled together until sunrise. None of us spoke. I could hear Jenna's heart pounding. Even Liam's breathing was uneven, terrified. When morning finally arrived, the forest looked clear again. Sunlight streamed through the trees. For a split second, it felt like the night had fooled us, just a trick of nerves and darkness. But then I looked around the campsite. Footprints. They were everywhere, around the tent, near the fire pit, circling us like something had been walking around all night. The grass was flattened and damp, as if heavy steps had pressed into it over and over again. I followed one set of prints toward the edge of the clearing. They stopped abruptly, right where the deer had stood when we first saw it. There was no body, no tracks leading away. Nothing. Just one thing left behind, a large patch of fur tangled in the grass, drenched in dark, dried blood. Jenna urged us to pack up fast. I didn't argue. We left everything, the grill, blankets, even some clothes. I just needed to get my family away from that place. As we reached the car, Chloe whispered, "Dad, look." She pointed toward the forest behind us. Between the trees stood something tall. Not an animal. It looked like the deer, but its stance was wrong. It was upright, its legs stretched downward like arms, its head cocked at a broken angle. Even from that distance, I could see its eyes, glowing faintly in daylight. When I blinked, it was gone. We drove until the forest thinned and the road opened wide. No one spoke the entire way home. That night, I found hoof prints in the dirt behind our house, perfectly formed, just below Liam's bedroom window. Story 4. If I had turned back when he warned me, maybe I wouldn't still hear his voice some nights calling from the woods. It began as just another camping trip. I was alone, trying to shake off the stress that city life had pushed into my head. The forest, Black Hollow they called it, was supposed to be quiet, untouched, perfect for clearing my thoughts. The first day was calm. The air smelled of wet pine and old soil. I hiked for hours until I found a spot near a narrow stream, surrounded by tall oaks that looked older than memory itself. I pitched my tent, made a small fire, and felt that rare peace only silence gives. But silence doesn't always mean safety. The next morning, I went exploring. The forest was deeper than maps showed, narrow paths covered in moss, branches low enough to brush your face. I lost track of time until I saw faint smoke drifting between the trees. Someone else was nearby. When I followed the smoke, I found an old man sitting beside a campfire. He wore faded clothes, wool trousers, suspenders, and a torn coat that looked out of another century. His beard was thin, his skin pale, and his eyes almost colorless. He stared at the fire quietly, roasting something small on a stick. When he noticed me, he smiled. "Evening, traveler," he said. His voice was rough, but oddly calm. "You're camping out this way?" I nodded. "Just nearby." I set up past the stream. The old man's smile faltered. His eyes lifted toward the trees. "You didn't go past the fourth oak, did you?" I blinked. "I don't know. I wasn't counting trees." He leaned forward. "You should have. Don't camp beyond the fourth oak. Nothing past there stays quiet at night." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some kind of local superstition. "What happens past the fourth oak?" He looked back at his fire. "Things walk there that remember being alive." That sentence made my skin crawl. I tried to smile, to act like it was an old joke. "Thanks for the warning," I said quickly. He nodded once. "Be careful where you sleep." When I turned to leave, I noticed the thing roasting over his fire. It wasn't meat from an animal I recognized. The skin was pale, thin, almost human-looking. I walked faster after that. By the time I reached my campsite, the sun was dipping below the tree line. I counted the oaks near my tent without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. Then I saw the fourth. It stood less than 10 feet from my tent, and behind it, another one. I was past the fourth oak. I wanted to move, but darkness fell too quickly, and I decided to wait until morning. I told myself that old man was probably just being dramatic, but around midnight, I realized how wrong I was. The forest turned silent, so silent that I could hear my heartbeat louder than the wind. The air seemed thicker, colder. Then, through the tent fabric, I saw a faint flicker of orange light. Firelight. Thinking maybe the old man had come back, I unzipped my tent flap. He was standing about 20 feet away. No campfire this time, just him, motionless between the trees. My flashlight beam caught his face, and my stomach twisted. His eyes weren't colorless anymore. They were pure black, empty holes. His skin looked gray and tight, stretched over bones like dried paper. He wasn't breathing. Still, he smiled. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. His voice was colder now, hollow, as if spoken from underground. "The fourth oak was yours to stop." I backed up, trying to close the tent flap, but my hands shook too much. When I looked again, the old man was gone. I didn't sleep. Every hour, I heard faint crunching sounds, footsteps circling my tent. At one point, something brushed the tent wall, slow, deliberate, like fingers dragging along the fabric. Just before dawn, I heard whispers, dozens of them, male, female, all murmuring beneath the rustle of leaves. I couldn't make out their words but felt their meaning, like regret and hunger mixed together. I stayed frozen, holding my flashlight and praying for sunlight. When morning finally came, I stepped outside. The forest looked normal again. Birds were singing. The stream was clear. But my camp felt off, as if everything had shifted slightly overnight. And then I noticed the ground. Footprints, no, deeper marks, surrounded my tent. They were shaped like bare feet, but twisted wrong, stretched too long, pressed deep into the soil. I followed them until they led right to the fourth oak. Behind it, the earth was darker, like scorched. Where the old man had stood, there was a small circle of burnt wood, and lying in the center was something blackened and rotten, small bones curled together in ash. I packed my gear as fast as I could and started walking back to my car. The forest was bright and quiet, yet every so often I thought I heard faint footsteps behind me. When I finally reached the road, I looked back one last time. At the edge of the trees stood a figure in old clothes with hollow black eyes. He was smiling. I blinked, and he was gone. That night, safe in my apartment, I tried not to think about it. I showered, made tea, and went to bed early. But just as I was falling asleep, I heard something faint from outside my window, a crackling sound, like a campfire. Then his voice whispered through the glass, soft, distant but clear. "You shouldn't have crossed the fourth oak." Story 5. Have you ever woken up and known, deep down, that something around you has changed, even before you opened your eyes? That's how that morning began. I didn't see it right away, but I felt it. The forest was too quiet, too still, like it was holding its breath. There were 5 of us on that hiking trip. Me, Ryan, Brooke, Ethan, and Mia. We'd set up camp in Maple Ridge Forest, miles from the nearest town. It was supposed to be one last summer adventure before college resumed. Our fire had burned low during the night, and soft morning light was filtering through the mist when Ryan shook us awake. "Guys," he whispered, "come look at this." We crawled out of our tents, still groggy. That's when we saw it. A narrow dirt path stretched straight from the middle of our campsite into the forest. It was perfectly straight, not like a natural trail, not like anything we'd seen before. The ground was smooth, freshly turned, as if someone had carved it overnight. Brooke frowned. "This wasn't here yesterday?" "Maybe we just didn't notice," Mia said, though her voice cracked halfway through. "No," I whispered. "Our tents are right where they were. The path wasn't here." None of us wanted to say what we were all thinking, that someone, or something, had made it while we slept. Ryan, being Ryan, smirked and said, "Probably some park workers. Let's check it out after breakfast." But Ethan shook his head. "No way. This forest hasn't had rangers in years. The last station closed a decade ago." The air felt thick, like the forest itself was waiting for us to make a decision. We spent the morning pretending nothing was wrong. We cooked, joked, packed tents. But every few minutes, one of us glanced at that path. It didn't make sense. There were no tire marks, no signs of tools or footprints, just a perfect, smooth road of dirt disappearing into the trees. By noon, curiosity won. Ryan insisted we follow it, just a short way. Brooke refused. "We shouldn't go down there. What if it leads to something we don't want to find?" We argued, split down the middle. In the end, we agreed to stay put, but Ryan decided to stand watch near the trail entrance, just to see if anyone came. He never came back. When Mia noticed he'd been gone for more than half an hour, she and Ethan went to look for him. I waited with Brooke by the fire pit. The woods seemed to lean closer as the sun climbed higher. No birds, no wind. Just silence pressing down on us. 2 hours later, only Brooke and I were left. "Maybe they got lost," I said, forcing my voice to sound steady. She shook her head. "They couldn't have. It's one line, straight in, straight out." We debated whether to look for them or wait. Finally, she stood up. "I'll go check. You stay here. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, you leave." She walked slowly toward the start of the path. I saw her silhouette fade between the trees. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, faintly, I swear I heard her voice calling my name. "Julia." I ran toward her voice, shouting back. But when I got close to the path, she wasn't there. Only her footprints leading in, and then stopping abruptly a few steps down, like she'd simply vanished into the air. The forest felt wrong now, as if it were watching me breathe. Panic made my thoughts spin. I didn't know what to do. The sun was dipping low, long shadows stretching across camp. I sat near the fire pit, gripping my backpack, listening for anything. Footsteps, voices, a hint of my friends. The silence was endless. When dusk came, golden light filtered through the leaves, beautiful but strange. The path looked darker now, its edges sharp as if cut from the world. My whole body trembled. I wanted to run, but part of me whispered that maybe, just maybe, the path was the only way to find them. As the sun touched the horizon, I felt something shift inside me. I couldn't take the silence anymore. I picked up my flashlight and stepped forward. 1 step, 2 steps. The forest around me glowed in sunset gold. The air was warm. Then I reached the 5th step. Darkness, not night, but complete, suffocating blackness. The moment my foot touched the deeper part of the path, light disappeared. My flashlight flickered violently before going out. When I looked back, the entrance was gone. There was no forest, no sound, no smell, nothing. Just empty air. I shouted for my friends, my voice echoing in the hollow dark. No answer. Something moved behind me. I couldn't see it, but I could hear a faint dragging sound, like bare feet dragging across soil. Closer, closer. I turned and ran blindly, screaming, trying to find where the light had been. Then, from the dark ahead of me, I heard Ryan's voice. "Julia, this way." I followed it without thinking. My flashlight flickered once, just enough to catch a glimpse. Ryan stood there smiling, but his eyes were gone, black pits gleaming faintly, like wet stone. His mouth moved again, only this time his voice didn't match his lips. It sounded deeper. "Wrong. Stay on the path," it said. "You belong here now." The darkness swallowed him, and me with it. That's the last thing I remember. They found my tent 3 days later, the fire pit cold, everything in its place. But there was one new feature in that forest, another perfectly straight path leading away, as if someone had drawn a new line overnight, and at the end of it, another camp now waits for morning to see what wasn't there before. Story 6. If you ever plan a romantic camping trip, just promise me one thing. Never choose a place so quiet you can hear your own heartbeat echo against the trees. That's where everything started for us. Lila and I wanted a weekend away from the city. No phones, no sounds of traffic, just time alone under the stars. We found a perfect hidden spot deep inside Grey Pine Forest, a place no one really talks about but everyone warns you not to go too far into. Too isolated, they said. I took that as a good thing. We arrived in the late afternoon, laughter bouncing between us as we unpacked the car. The air felt fresh, untouched, and calm. "See?" I told her. "No neighbors, no noise, just us." She smiled. "Finally," she said. We pitched our tent near a clearing surrounded by tall pines. By twilight, the forest took on a golden glow, peaceful and silent except for the faint buzz of insects. We cooked, drank, and watched the fire dance. It felt perfect, until the laughter began. It was faint, almost distant, childlike. A small giggle broke through the night air. Lila frowned. "Did you hear that?" I nodded, turning my head toward the trees. "Probably another camper," I said, though we hadn't seen anyone for miles. The laughter came again, a burst of quick, high-pitched giggles. Then silence. We stared into the forest for a minute and brushed it off, maybe echoing from somewhere nearby. But as the fire burned lower and stars appeared, the sound changed. The laughter deepened. It wasn't a child anymore. It was rough, slow, like an adult trying to imitate a child's laugh. Lila whispered, "That doesn't sound right." The laughter stopped as soon as she spoke. We tried to ignore it, climbing into the tent and zipping it up against the cold. I joked about raccoons telling ghost stories, trying to make her smile. It worked for a few minutes, until we heard it again, closer. This time, it was right outside the tent. It started soft, stuttering, then turned into a deep, broken chuckle, shifting in tone as if it couldn't decide what kind of voice to use. Each burst made the air feel heavier, pressing against the tent fabric. Lila grabbed my arm. "Someone's out there." That single sentence made my throat tighten. I listened. The laughter was circling us now, slow and dragging, pausing every few seconds before starting again, always just behind us, never in front. "Who's there?" I shouted, voice cracking. No answer. Just another faint laugh, deeper still, almost choking. I fumbled for my flashlight. My hand shook as I found the zipper and pulled the flap open. The night air felt cold and dry against my skin. I shone the light outside. Nothing. No movement. No figures. Just the clearing bathed in silver moonlight. Then I saw the ground. Footprints, ours, circling the tent. But something was wrong with them. Each set of our footprints was followed by another mark, deep, sharp, like a claw pressing beside every step. I crouched, bringing the light closer to the dirt. The claw marks were fresh. Some were still moist with soil turned up from the earth. Lila whispered from inside the tent, "What's happening?" "I don't know," I said quietly. The forest had gone still again. Too still. The trees stood like frozen pillars, their shadows stretching unnaturally long across the clearing. Then the laughter came back, louder now, echoing from every direction. It was no longer playful, it was distorted, and then, mixed with the laughter, came breathing, fast, raspy, right near my ear. I spun around, light trembling in my hand, but there was nothing there. I stepped backward toward the tent, heart slamming against my ribs. "Get your stuff," I said. "We're leaving." We started to pack quickly, shoving things into bags, hands stumbling over each other. But the laughter didn't stop. As we worked, the noise began to blend with deeper voices, whispering words I couldn't understand, low tones that didn't sound human. Suddenly, a loud slap hit the side of the tent. Lila screamed. I pointed the light toward it. There was a handprint pressed into the fabric. Not a human hand. The fingers were too long, tipped with sharp ends where nails should have been. Without thinking, I grabbed her wrist and pulled her out into the clearing. "Run!" I said. We sprinted toward the car, the flashlight beam jumping wildly over trunks and branches. The laughter grew faster, coming from both sides now, childlike one moment, guttural the next, switching back and forth as if something was deciding what sound to use. When we reached the car, I turned the engine on, tires spitting dirt. Lila sobbed beside me. I pressed the pedal hard, speeding down the narrow track until the forest broke open into the main road. Even then, the laughter followed. It faded gradually, like the trees were swallowing it, but deep inside, I swear I could still hear faint giggles hiding in the wind. We didn't speak all the way back home. When we unpacked the car the next morning, I noticed something strange on the tent fabric. A trail of dark marks near the flap, the same handprint with long claw-like fingers baked into the material as if burned there. I threw it away immediately. But sometimes at night, when everything's quiet and I'm half asleep, I think I hear that same faint laugh outside the window. And each time it gets closer, until it sounds like it's right outside. Waiting for the moment I look out again and find nothing but my own footprints in the dirt below, each paired with a claw mark beside them. For more stories like this, share and subscribe, Goofy Horror.